I called my son for days, but he never answered. Finally, I went to his apartment. Just as I reached the door, the neighbor looked me straight in the eye and said, "Don't go in alone." My hands shook, but I turned the handle anyway. What I saw on the wall inside made my legs give out. If you're drawn into this story, make sure to subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Thomas Keller. I'm 76 years old, a retired factory worker, and a widowed father. Life has slowed down for me, but the one constant has always been my son, Michael. He's 43 now, living in the city, working long hours in IT. He doesn't call as much as he used to, but when he does, I hear the same boy I raised, and it keeps me going. Since my wife passed away, birthdays, holidays, even regular dinners have felt emptier. I make my own coffee in the mornings, take slow walks through the neighborhood, and keep the house tidy. But the silence in these walls is something I'll never get used to. The sound of Michael's voice, even if it's just a short call, has been my comfort. That's why it rattled me when he didn't pick up the phone. One day passed, then another. By the third day, I had called so many times my phone log was filled with his name. Each time, it went straight to voicemail. "Hey Mike," I said in one message, trying to keep my tone light. "It's Dad. Just checking in. Call me back when you can." But there was no answer. The days stretched on, and worry began to grow heavier than I could push away. I tried telling myself he was busy, maybe caught up with work, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Michael always called back, no matter how late, even if it was just to say, "I'm fine, Dad. Talk later." This silence wasn't him. By the fifth day, I couldn't sit still any longer. I packed up some food as an excuse, told myself I would surprise him, and drove to his apartment in the city. But what I didn't know then was that this visit would uncover more than I was prepared for. When I pulled up outside Michael's apartment building, the streets felt unusually quiet. It was early evening, the kind of time when lights begin to flicker on in windows and neighbors carry groceries from their cars. But there was no sign of Michael, and the stillness in the air unsettled me. I locked my car and walked slowly toward the front entrance, gripping the container of food I had brought with me as if it were some sort of shield. Inside the lobby, I was greeted by the familiar smell of dust and old carpet. I had visited a few times before, but tonight the building felt different, as if it were holding its breath. I pressed the button for the elevator, but before the doors could close, I heard someone call my name. "Mr. Keller?" I turned and saw Mrs. Rivera, the neighbor who lived a floor below Michael. She was carrying a bag of laundry, her face lined with concern. I managed a small smile. "Hello, Mrs. Rivera. I'm just here to check on my son. He hasn't returned my calls." Her expression darkened. She set her laundry down and walked toward me. "I was hoping you'd come. Something isn't right. I heard shouting in his apartment 2 nights ago, and then silence. No one's seen him since. Please, don't go in alone." Her words made my stomach tighten. Shouting? Silence afterward? I wanted to ask more, but the elevator doors opened and something inside me told me I couldn't waste another second. I nodded to her, thanked her quietly, and stepped inside. The ride up felt endless. Each ding of the elevator made my chest feel heavier. When the doors finally slid open, the hallway stretched ahead of me, dimly lit, lined with doors that all looked the same. Michael's was at the end. I walked slowly, each step echoing against the walls. When I reached his door, I noticed right away that it wasn't fully closed. The lock was turned, but the door sat slightly ajar, as if someone had left in a hurry. My pulse quickened. I pushed gently, and the door creaked open. The apartment was dark, only faint light spilling through the blinds. I stepped inside, calling out softly, "Michael, it's Dad. Are you here?" No answer. The air smelled faintly metallic, mixed with something stale. My eyes scanned the living room. A chair was overturned near the coffee table, as if someone had knocked it aside. A glass lay shattered on the floor, water still pooled around it. My heart began to race. I set the food down on the counter and moved further in. The silence was heavy, oppressive, the kind that makes your ears strain for the smallest sound. That's when I noticed something on the fall near the dining table. I walked closer, my breath catching as the words came into focus. Written in large, even strokes across the wall, smeared like it had been done in desperation, were the words, "Help her." My legs went weak. I grabbed the back of the nearest chair to keep from falling. The words looked raw, jagged, like they had been carved out of fear. But who and where was Michael? I forced myself to steady my breathing. This wasn't just about unanswered calls anymore. Something terrible had happened here, and my son had been caught in it. I looked around the apartment, searching for clues. The coffee table had papers scattered across it, bills, work documents, nothing unusual. His phone, however, lay on the ground near the cabinet, its screen cracked, as if it had been slammed or thrown. I bent down and picked it up. The device was dead. A sickening thought hit me. If Michael had tried to call for help, he hadn't been able to. As I stood there, a noise from the hallway startled. Quick, light footsteps. I turned sharply toward the door. A young woman appeared, standing in the entrance with wide eyes. Her hair was pulled back messily, and she wore a jacket too big for her. She froze when she saw me. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She hesitated before answering. "I'm Anna. I live next door." Her voice was low, trembling. I took a step closer. "Did you see my son? Do you know what happened here?" Anna's eyes darted toward the wall where the words were written, and she flinched. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "It's not safe." Her words sent a chill down my spine. I gripped the edge of the counter, trying to steady myself. "Tell me where my son is," I demanded, my voice firmer now. She swallowed hard. He tried to protect me. That's why he's gone." The room seemed to spin. I felt the weight of her words slam into me. Michael was missing because of her. The plea on the "help her" suddenly made sense. My son had left that message, or for anyone might come after, begging them to protect this frightened young woman standing before me. I stared at my heart pounding. "What do you mean protect you? From who?" She opened her mouth, then shut it, tears forming in her eyes. "Please," she said quietly. "You have to trust me, but if we don't move fast, he could die." My chest. The fear I had carried for days was now sharpened into something worse than imagined. My son wasn't just avoiding calls. He wasn't just busy. He was gone, caught in something dangerous, something tied and trembling in front of me. And in that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. Walk away and call for help, or step into the storm myself. I stood in that dim apartment, staring at the trembling young woman across from her. Name was Anna, she said, and the look in her eyes a fear that ran deeper than her words could express. My son's message on the wall, "Help her," burned in my mind at the same. I had no idea what Michael had been pulled into, but in that moment understood that whatever he did, it had been for her. I took a deep breath and steadied my voice. "Anna, I need the truth. What happened to my son? Why did he write that?" Her shoulders sagged, and her lips trembled before she finally spoke. "It's because of me. My ex-boyfriend, he's dangerous. He found out where I lived, and he started showing up here. Michael overheard him yelling at me one night, and he stepped in. He told him to leave, but instead it escalated. Your son, he wouldn't back down. He told me to hide, and when I came back, Michael was gone. That's when I saw those words on the wall." Her confession struck me like a blow. My son had disappeared because he had tried to protect her. I looked at her wrist then, at the dark bruise peeking out from under her sleeve, and I knew she wasn't lying. Anger surged in my chest, but beneath it was fear. Fear that Michael might already be hurt beyond saving. I gripped the counter to keep myself steady. "Why didn't you call the police?" Tears spilled from her eyes as she shook her head. "I tried, but he has people. He knows how to slip away, how to scare witnesses into silence. I thought if I stayed quiet, maybe he would leave me alone. But now Michael's gone, and it's my fault." I clenched my fists. "No, it's not your fault. He chose to help you, and now we're going to help him. Sitting in fear won't bring my son back." For a moment, she just looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise. Maybe she had expected me to give up, to walk away, and let the authorities handle it. But I wasn't built that way. I may have been an old man, but I had spent my entire life protecting my family, and I wasn't about to stop now. I grabbed Michael's cracked phone from the floor and turned it over in my hands. Dead battery. But even broken things can tell a story. I slid it into my pocket, planning to check for any data later. Then I faced Anna again. "If you want to make this right, you need to stop holding back. Tell me everything. Where did your ex hang around? Where might he have taken Michael?" She hesitated, biting her lip. He used to wait for me outside the building. sometimes at the corner store across the street. Once I saw his car near the old storage units. That's the last place I ever saw him watching. My heart thudded harder. Storage units. A secluded place. If Michael had been dragged there, time already slipping away. I stepped closer to Anna, lowering my voice. Listen carefully. We don't have the luxury of waiting it. You're coming with me to point out where this is. We'll call the police from there, but I need to see it with first. I need to know my son isn't lost. She looked terrified, but after she nodded. Okay, I'll help you. Before leaving, I scribbled a note and left it in case anyone looking. It read simply, went to find my son. Send the old storage unit Oak Street. I knew it wasn't much, but it was a breadcrumb. Just like Michael. As we stepped into the hallway, Mrs. Rivera appeared from her apartment. She looked at us both with worried, Mr. Please be careful. That man is not someone you should face. I gave her a grim smile. I'm not alone. I've got a reason to fight, and that's stronger than fear. With that, Anna and I made our way out of the building. The night air was cool, but my body burned with determination. I was no longer just a father searching for his missing son. I was a man preparing to walk into danger, carrying both the fear of what I might find and the hope that my son was still alive. In that moment, I understood what the turning point really was. It wasn't just choosing to act, it was choosing to face fear head-on, no matter how unprepared I might have felt. Michael had risked himself to protect Anna. Now it was my turn, to risk everything to bring him back. The drive to the storage units felt like the longest of my life. Anna sat beside me in silence, staring out the window, with her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her fear was so heavy, I could almost feel it pressing into the air between us. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, my mind racing with one thought over and over again. Please, let Michael still be alive. When we pulled up to the old storage facility on Oak Street, the place looked abandoned. The row of units stretched out into the darkness, their metal doors rusted, their locks old and weathered. A single flickering light hung over the entrance, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. My chest tightened. This was the kind of place where terrible things happened, and I hated that my son might be inside. Anna pointed toward the far corner. That's where I saw his car before, the third unit from the end. Her voice shook as she spoke. I nodded and got out, my knees stiff, but my steps firm. Every instinct in me screamed to turn back, to wait for the police. But the thought of Michael locked away, maybe hurt, made hesitation impossible. I had to see for myself. As we approached, I noticed the padlock on the third unit hung loosely, not locked at all. That small detail made my pulse hammer. Someone had been here recently. I motioned for Anna to stay back and slowly pulled the door upward. The sound of the metal rolling open was deafening in the silence of the night. Inside, the air was damp and cold. Boxes were stacked along the walls, and the faint smell of oil and mildew filled the space. My eyes adjusted, and then I saw him. Michael. He was slumped against the far wall, his wrists bound with rope, his face bruised and swollen. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My legs nearly gave out under me, just like they had when I first saw the words on the wall in his apartment. But then I forced myself forward. Michael! I shouted, my voice breaking. His head lifted slowly, his eyes half open. Dad? His voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. I rushed to him, falling to my knees beside him. My hands shook as I fumbled with the knots, trying to free him. I'm here, son. I'm here. Hold on. Anna stepped inside, tears streaming down her face. She pulled out a small pocket knife from her bag and handed it to me. With trembling hands, I cut through the ropes and pulled Michael into my arms. He groaned in pain, but the relief in his eyes was clear. Before I could say another word, a sound behind us made my blood run cold. Heavy footsteps echoed on the pavement outside the unit. Then a voice, low and sharp, cut through the air. I told you to keep quiet, Anna. Now look what you've done. The ex-boyfriend stood in the doorway, a large figure silhouetted against the dim light. His eyes burned with rage, and in his hand he held a metal pipe. Anna gasped, stepping back instinctively. I positioned myself between him and my son. It's over, I said firmly. The police are on their way. He sneered, taking a step inside. You think the cops will save you? By the time they get here, You'll all regret sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." My heart pounded, but I stood my ground. I wasn't a young man anymore, but I knew fear would only feed his power. "You hurt my son," I said, my voice low but steady, "and you tried to destroy her life, but you won't take another step closer." For a tense moment, the air between us crackled like lightning. He tightened his grip on the pipe, his jaw clenched. I could feel Anna trembling behind me, and I tightened my stance, ready to shield them both if I had to. Then, suddenly, the sound of sirens pierced the night. Red and blue lights flashed across the metal walls of the unit. The man froze, his expression shifting from rage to panic. Seconds later, police officers swarmed in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. "Drop it! Now!" The man hesitated, then finally let the pipe clatter to the ground. He was tackled to the floor, handcuffed, and dragged out of the unit as he cursed and shouted. The echoes of his voice faded as the officers pulled him away, and the silence that followed felt like a weight lifting off my chest. I turned back to Michael, still holding him upright. His eyes were glassy, but a faint smile tugged at his lips. "You found me," he whispered. Tears blurred my vision. "Of course I did. I'll never stop looking for you, son." Anna knelt beside us, sobbing quietly. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this. He wanted to ruin me, and Michael, he stepped in. He saved me." I looked at her, then back at my son. "He saved you, and tonight we saved him. That's what family means. It doesn't matter if it's by blood or by bond. We stand for each other." The officers helped lift Michael onto a stretcher. As they carried him out, I followed closely, refusing to let go of his hand. The flashing lights of the police cars painted the night sky, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The climax wasn't just finding my son alive, it was the realization that his courage, his heart, was still the same as it had always been. He had risked everything for someone else, and in return, I had risked everything to bring him back. And together, in that moment, we had won. When the officers carried Michael out of the storage unit, I followed close behind, refusing to let go of his hand. The night air felt different now, lighter, though my heart was still pounding. After days of unanswered call and endless worry, I finally had him back. His grip on my hand was weak, but it was enough. It meant he was alive. It meant hope wasn't lost. They loaded him into the ambulance, and I climbed inside with him. Anna stayed behind with the police, answering their questions. But before the doors closed, she looked at me and mouthed the words, "Thank you." I nodded, knowing that her gratitude wasn't just for me, it was for Michael too. He had risked everything to protect her, and that single act had nearly cost him his life. On the ride to the hospital, I sat beside him, brushing his hair back from his bruised forehead like I used to when he was a boy. "You're safe now, son," I whispered. "I've got you." His eyes fluttered open for a second, and he gave me the faintest smile. That tiny smile carried me through the rest of the night. At the hospital, doctors worked quickly. They cleaned his wounds, checked for broken bones, and made sure the damage wasn't worse than it appeared. They told me he was dehydrated, bruised, and exhausted, but thankfully nothing was permanent. He would heal. I sat by his bedside as he drifted in and out of sleep, my hand resting on his arm, my heart finally starting to slow down. When morning came, Anna arrived at the hospital. She looked different in the daylight, still tired, but stronger somehow. She thanked me again, tears in her eyes, and told me she was ready to press charges against her ex. The police had him in custody, and she was determined not to let fear silence her anymore. I believed her. Later, when Michael was more awake, he finally spoke about what had happened. His voice was rough, but his words were clear. "Dad, I didn't answer because I didn't want you caught in this. I thought I could handle it on my own, but when he came after Anna, I couldn't just stand by." I swallowed hard and squeezed his hand. "You don't ever have to handle things on your own, Michael. Not while I'm here. You're my son. No matter how old you get, I'll always come for you." Tears welled in his eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw him look at me, not as if I were just his aging father, but as his protector, his anchor. It reminded me of when he was small, how he used to run into my arms after scraping his knee or having a bad day at school. That bond had never disappeared. It had only been buried under the noise of adulthood and distance. Over the next few days, as Michael recovered, I spent every hour at his side. We talked about simple things: baseball, the old neighborhood, even his mother, whose absence we both still felt deeply. But we also talked about the silence between us, the calls missed, the distance that had grown. He promised me it wouldn't happen again, that he had realized how much he still needed me, no matter how busy or overwhelmed life became. Anna visited often too, always thanking Michael for stepping in when no one else had. I could see how much his courage had changed her, given her the strength to stand up and take her life back. In a strange way, her presence reminded me that family isn't just the people we are born to. Sometimes it's the people whose lives intersect with ours in moments of crisis. As for me, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. Growing older can make a person feel invisible, like the world has moved on without you. I had felt that when my calls went unanswered, when the silence stretched for days. I had wondered if my role as a father was fading, if I was becoming just a name on a phone log. But this experience taught me something powerful. Age doesn't erase who you are or what you can do. It doesn't make your love any smaller or your strength any less. I had walked into that apartment, afraid of what I might find, and I walked out with a truth that would stay with me forever. Family needs you at every age. Love doesn't expire, and sometimes it takes an old man's persistence to bring someone home safe. When Michael was finally discharged, I drove him back to my house instead of his apartment. He needed rest, and I needed him close. As we sat at my kitchen table that evening, I lit a candle, not on a cupcake this time, but on a full cake I had picked up from the store. We laughed quietly as he blew it out, both of us knowing it wasn't a birthday, but it felt like one. It felt like we had been given another chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. That night, as he slept on the couch, I sat in my chair and watched the soft rise and fall of his chest. Gratitude washed over me. I had found him. I had saved him. And in return, he had reminded me of my purpose. The world may see me as just an old man, but I know better now. I am still a father. I am still needed, and that is more powerful than anything age could ever take away. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Or